Well, I feel like the levels of anxiety and depression are just so on the rise.
Absolutely.
Everyone I talk to brings that up.
Yes.
And it's so driven by social media.
Exactly.
But also, we're so connected, yet we could not be more disconnected.
100%
how many
agree.
times do we sit down for an hour and talk without your phone?
Exactly. Hardly ever.
Because you're answering clients or you're doing emails or whatever.
Yes.
And that's why I love doing this, because you're forced to sit there without your phone. But
exactly.
it just doesn't happen. And
No.
I think it's kind of ruining kids in a lot of ways.
Oh, I absolutely think that's true. And it's very, very, very sad, because the challenge is I don't think it's getting any better. Mm-hmm. I think things are getting worse, because I think more and more kids are getting phones earlier, and so then they have access to so much more out there, and there's a loss of connection, of talking, like you said, of just texting, or I don't know, there's not that feeling of, why don't we get people together and have a community, just like this, obviously, is a great way of doing it.
How much do you see as well that the mom speaks badly about her own body and she yo-yo diets or she restricts, and so then the daughter sees that and then she doesn't feel good enough and she feels like she needs to do the same thing, and the mom's probably not even conscious the daughter's watching her every move, yet she's doing the exact same thing?
Yeah. So often, incredibly often, especially with my younger and younger clients. I mean, I've seen as young as 8 years old. And so when I have a call like that, I'll bring the mom in first and talk to her and be like, okay, obviously being 8 years old, you don't just get it from social media. Right. I mean, let's be real, mm-hmm. right? So, and then a lot of the moms will take ownership. I've had some moms who are like, you know what, you're right. I maybe only eat steamed spinach for dinner, or I don't eat carbohydrates, and she hears me talking about, they make mommy fat, and she's, they'll admit that they're saying things or doing things that obviously are not setting a good example. Mm-hmm. And other moms will defend what they're doing. I'm in my 40s, I can't eat like that, so therefore, I'm not going to eat carbohydrates just to satisfy my daughter. Mm-hmm. So you get both things, and you have to kind of hold on to yourself and breathe, because of course you want to go on the attack sometimes. Mm-hmm. But that's not going to help anybody. So I try to just kind of come to a place, and it's not me alone. They need to be working with a really great therapist. Mm-hmm. And so, but sometimes I'm the inroad, I'm a little bit less threatening than a therapist. So the kid will come see me first. And so I'm just the nutritionist. And then as we work together, I recommend them to a therapist, because you have to have a team approach. Like that, I can't take on a case that's pretty challenging on my own.
How often, or how long does it usually take? And this is probably a bad question, because I'm sure it's specific to each client, but how long do you see it takes someone to overcome an eating disorder?
I think it depends on how long they've been in it. Mm-hmm. To be honest, I think that's the biggest thing, because it's a rewiring, right? They've sort of manipulated themselves to believe a certain thing. So they're hardwired in whatever it is, if it's body dysmorphia, if it's just the way they feel about themselves. But if I can reach somebody fairly quickly, it can take maybe a year to 2 years. And then somebody who's been doing it for a while, it can take 3 to 5, 8 years. I mean, I've had clients that I've seen for 7 years, on and off, of course, but certainly it's taken that long to really find peace and, forgive themselves. And there's some cases are incredibly complicated. There could be abuse in their history, which is, you find also often. So it's complicated. But to me, it's as long as you're on the path and you're on the journey of it, it's okay. Mm-hmm. You don't feel like there needs to be, I'm not happy until I can actually get to a place of complete freedom, because that may take a long time.
I think one of the most important things you taught me was to stop weighing myself, because that was my obsession. I stood on the scale every day, mm-hmm. and sometimes twice a day, and I was so restricted with calories, and it was just, I had to see the number I wanted. It was never the number I wanted, of course, and so it was just this perpetual problem. Why is that one of the first things that you tell people?
So many reasons. Oh my gosh. So when I was going through my own struggle, I would carry the scale wherever I went.
Oh my goodness.
Everywhere I went. And so it was a really bad place. I mean, when I go traveling, I'd have to figure out how to put it in my suitcase. I mean, I could go on and on. But I'm not the only person. There's so many clients that's why I think I can relate, because they they see me now in my life and they're like, okay, wow, you know, you're in a place where you feel you're at peace with food in your body. So how do I get there? And when I tell them that, I still have the same struggles of weighing myself multiple times a day and never being good enough. And it's because it's not about the number. I think they think it's about the number. They think if I could get just to this magical whatever number, I'll be happy and I'll feel good about my body. And they get there and they realize, wait a second, why didn't like magic happen?
Yeah.
You know, so it's so much more about them and what they're feeling inside versus what they feel like the number is going to hold for them. But yes, it dictates your mood, your day, what you're going to eat that day. If you're going to go out with your friends, life's put on hold. God forbid if you're up a pound and your friends want to go to the beach that day and you're like, well, that's not happening. So it dictates every part of your life. So I don't recommend the scale at all. I think you go by your clothes. You know when you're up. I mean, I think every woman knows. Why do you need to jump on a scale to get, you know, just then you have to like step back for a second and be like, okay, what am I doing? You know, maybe I've been drinking too much alcohol. Maybe I've been having too many sweets at night. What am I doing? Just reevaluate, be gentle with yourself and get back on track versus now I'm going to go on a juice cleanse tomorrow. Now I'm going to work out for 2 hours. Now I'm going to weigh myself until I get back to a place where I feel comfortable. There's such harsh movements in that, which I think really damages the psyche.
Well, and the other thing is the calorie counting.
Yes.
That is also obsessive. And everyone comes up with their own magic number of what I'm allowed to have today. And I mean, I've heard absurd low numbers.
Right.
And you can't get nourishment when you're counting calories.
Correct.
Right?
No. Well, not even that, but like the energy that it's expended, like the amount of time. It's just life's too big and important to be sitting there and calculating and looking behind packages and like, oh, how am I going to fit this in? Because this has too much and I do really want it. It's the amount of energy and time that it takes, which it shouldn't. And so I think that's a big problem with a lot of these different apps now with counting calories. People get very obsessive and compulsive about keeping track of everything. So there's a way to do it that is easy and so much more at peace than what people think. It's just that they feel like there has to be a much more restrictive way if they're going to do it correctly.
Yeah, it's so black or white, right?
Yes,
There's
very
no
much.
gray area.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But this is what I like about your whole message is the intuitive eating.
Right.
And it's eating the way your body needs to eat, how you feel best. Do you need more food? Then eat more food. Do you need less? Like, what is it that day? And it's becoming conscious and aware of your body.
Exactly.
How do you teach that to people?
That's a great question. So my sort of slogan is, it's not about the food, it's about the feeling. And I think there is such a disconnect for so many people. And even today when I did a presentation at USC for our swim camp, young boys and girls, ages range from like 10 to 14. And I was teaching this to them and it was really interesting. Their eyes kind of opened. It's like, how many of you eat and are present, just sitting there eating? Or are you always connected to something, watching TV, the computer, your phone, your iPad? What are you doing while you're eating? So it's almost establishing the how first, like how are you eating? Are you sitting? Are you present? And then the second thing is listening to what your body feels like. What feels good for you isn't going to feel good for me. So there's not one diet plan. You can't read a book and be like, oh, I'm going to follow this. It doesn't work that way. So it needs to be, how does that food make me feel? And a donut make you feel horrible, and it might make me feel fine, right? So it's more of like, don't judge the food for what it is. Obviously, there's nutrition in mind, and you want to be balanced, but it's not about the harshness about it. It's more about the feeling you have. So that's establishing number one. And then I have these Kristy's rules, which I love. I don't know if you remember those.
No, I don't remember them.
You don't?
No.
Oh, they're my favorite. I usually laminate them and I give them to every client. I'm like, this needs to go in your refrigerator. And my kids follow them too because I think they're so important. And one of them is, for example, no standing and eating. You know, how many times do you come home from work, you're famished, you open up the refrigerator and you start eating directly out of the refrigerator, right? Yeah. Horrible habit to get into. not eating out of boxes, bags, containers, or jars. Super important.
I need you to tell Bruce that.
Okay.
My darling love only eats out of containers when possible.
Oh, that is a huge no-no for me.
Right?
It's completely again, like you don't know how much you're having. It's just a very mindless way of eating versus putting it on a plate, sitting down at the table and eating. Like a lot of my clients that come to see me, I'm like, even if they don't have a table, I'm just find a space, maybe light a candle, but just be. For 20 minutes, a half hour, just eat your food with enjoyment, like really enjoy it, and then move on to the next thing. Nobody does that anymore. If you notice, people are eating in their car, they're eating watching TV, they're eating while they're working and multitasking. So that's really important. And then this whole like eating out of a bag, just just not being conscious. Or hummus is very interesting. So many of my clients will it's a tub of hummus and they just eat directly out of it. Like,
God.
that's a container, right? Like but they feel like it's this like one portion type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's where the struggle is. I think more and more it's about being present, the awareness, and understanding portions. Like really just putting that, you don't have to measure it out. It's not about like, a portion is 2 tablespoons, whatever. It's about just being mindful of like, if a friend was coming over, what would you serve them? I use this a lot because
you'd never hand them a tub of guacamole and be like,
here's your guacamole and a bag of chips.
Yeah.
You'd make it nice. You'd put it on a plate and you'd make it presentable. And that's how you should do it for yourself. So that's a really big thing for me. So I established those rules. I think there's 10 of them. And then just being present and aware of their body. So intuitive eating has a lot to do with what foods make you feel good, what foods make you bloated, what foods do you have and then can't stop eating. Because those are the ones that you can't have in the house. Like, you can experiment, but if bread is really hard for you to have in the house because you can't stop eating it, then for a while take it out. And then I say, well, maybe we take bread and we put it in your freezer and you take one out when you have it and then it's less tempting. But we find a way to make all foods good as long as they feel they can do it in the moment. Like ice cream might be something that you just can't have in the house for a long time. Maybe it's just something you go out and you treat yourself on a Sunday afternoon or whatever, but it's not something you keep in the house. That's not bad. That's not disordered, but it's finding a way, your way, that works for you.